Hey, good morning. This is a beautiful Sunday morning. I come to you along with the ducks and the birds, and they are singing this morning. They're making their joyful noise, and so I want to bring to you a joyful noise too. There's I've been really thinking a lot lately that this walk with God, this walk with Jesus. How did I ever come to this? You know, uh, for a long time in my life, I didn't want anything to do with Jesus, and for quite a while, I boastantly, proudly, arrogantly would call myself the pagan Christian, because my name is Christian, and I was very pagan, and I would that's what I would call myself. I was the pagan Christian in mockery of the title Christian, and in mockery of the Jewish or the Christian name and the Bible, Jesus, God, all that. And throughout my life, I would mock it pretty harshly. And and so, how did I, the pagan Christian, come to be a Christian, to love Jesus, and to give my heart and my life to Him? How did that happen? Well, my life is a mix. It's an odd. Well, it's not really an odd. It's a wild mix of drug abuse, physical abuse. And just filling my mind with all kinds of just wicked things, essentially, just wicked things, from music to movies to pictures and images. One of the things that corrupted me very much was that I had mentioned earlier that I was in Narcotics Anonymous when I was 16. And from 16 to 19, and during that time, being a young teenager, I was hanging out with, just seasoned drug addicts and who are much older than me, in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And one of the things that really corrupted my mind at a very young age is, I didn't know who I was. I didn't have any value in who I was. I hated who I was. I despised who I was. And so, how to find value and how to have value when you're communicating and talking with others and hanging out with people. And so one of the things that was very common was, we'd sit around, we'd, smoke our cigarettes and drink our coffee. And a lot of times amongst the men, we would try to be as perverted as we can in our language. And so, and it was always odd, how that was just a central thing. And so some of the folks I hung out with, my dear friends, were very, very perverted, and so it set my mind off on a very perverted way, the thinking perversion and all in humor. And but when you start doing it in humor, and it seeps in your mind, and that's what you think about, and or the thoughts that just come up, and that really, no, there's a ducks agreeing, that really affected me as I became an adult, and later when I found Jesus, the thoughts, my mind, the way my mind was formed, the highways, the ways of thinking, that was really affected. And so, anyway, I filled my mind with all kinds of things, and I, the music was as wicked and as evil as possible, and as in your face music, and not just that kind of music, but all kinds of music, and that's what I just partook of, and that's what I did, and I was a dancing fool, and I would dance everywhere and anywhere, to a lot of industrial, not really techno, but hard techno, industrial, death, slam, grunge, and I was a mosher, and I'm not just a typical mosher. I was one that would always go against a circle, and and so I would go against the flow, and so in this mind of just consuming, um, I guess the excitement and the passion of whatever moment was there, and a lot of times it was all just drug induced, and self pleasure seeking induced and so forth, and now there's a fly that's also joining us, and so that was my mind, and so a pagan Christian, I didn't want anything to do with Christianity, and I would mock them, and I really despised Christianity and Jesus and God and anything that had the name of Christian, anything that was from it, the Bible, whatever it was, and that's the way I lived, and that's the way I thought, and the older I got, the more ingrained that was in me, and I think I was, oh, how old was I? I was about maybe 25, 26, and I remember this lady. She was kind of, I guess she had a religious background and so forth, and we were all doing drugs together, so she wasn't living a religious life by no means, but she was really taking offense toward my mockery and toward my taking Jesus' name in vain, just really cursing and just the language that came out, and she really took offense to it, and she's, I don't remember what I was saying or something, but it was pretty bad for her to come out and tell me it's, that Jesus shouldn't be cursed in that way because he didn't deserve it. And I kind of was at the mindset. It's like, well, yeah, he does, and I didn't really care for him, and I didn't want to care for him, and so forth, and through that conversation, I think for the first time in my adult life, probably teenage on up, adult life, I got to the point where I could acknowledge that, okay, what Jesus said, and it was a pretty long conversation. I don't remember all we talked about, but I know it was pretty long, probably pretty long into the evening, and I can just picture her still sitting on the dresser, talking to me about this, and I got to the point where it's okay. Well, what Jesus said is good, and it's probably a nice way to live, and it may be right, but since you don't see it, since people don't live that way, it ain't true. So, therefore, it doesn't exist. It's not really applicable. It's not valid. And so I got to the point where, in my mind, I acknowledged that, okay, what Jesus did was good. I got that far, and everything else was just religion's fault. And so curse religion, curse Christianity, curse all that stuff. But okay, well, maybe I shouldn't curse Jesus as hard as I was. That's where I got in my mind, and so experiences went on and through life, and I went to a lot of the isms. When I was younger, I was really studying. As teenagers, we get involved and we just dive into something, and I dove into death music, death metal, and Satanism, and anything that was evil and wicked in that extreme. And I found out, in my mind, what I read from the Satanic Bible and so forth was that it was all about power, greed through power, greed through politics, greed to have power in life and to influence and to use your influence, your reputation for political power and greed in that aspect. And I wasn't interested in that. I was so lost. I was so messed up that I knew that wasn't for me. And through and from there it was into Druidism, and Druidism was about political as well. What I saw, let's see, Satanism was more like the greed about using your influence to exert power over people, your reputation. And Druidism was more along the political lines, using your power, your influence, your energy, whatever it may be, um, for political reasons. And that's just what I saw in my mind as I read and as I partook. It's like, nah, I don't want that, because I was really messed up. I really was. And I knew that inside me that how can I find truth or something to relate to me in my state and the experiences that I had and went through, and I knew that wasn't for me. And so I went into Buddhism and studied Buddhism and read Buddhism, and to me it was when I read that Siddhartha had when he come to his life and realize, wait, we're not supposed to deny ourselves. We're not, we're supposed to take care of ourselves. And he was underneath that tree, and they call it the tree of life. And he started eating everything around him because he was starving, he was hungry, and he was living the aesthetic way of life, denying himself. And so he started eating everything, and after he ate, he was eating the stuff around him, the grass and whatever fruit, whatever was there. He saw the energy, saw life flowing, and he saw how everything was connected, and that's where Buddhism really came from, was that moment. And he saw how everything was connected and flowed together and so forth, and that tree they call the tree of life, the tree that he was sitting under. And to me, when I read that and the description that he wrote, he went on a mushroom trip, and he ate some wonderful hallucinogenic mushrooms, and he had a wonderful, amazing trip. And I use a lot of hallucinogenics. I was a hallucinogenic junkie, as well as a drug junkie, and anything that would take me into oblivion, that's what I used. Not lightly, as much as I could. Oblivion was my drug of choice. And so I did a lot of hallucinogenics, and so I was like, he just went on a mushroom trip. Well, good, I'll just take more mushrooms. And so I didn't really get into Buddhism. And then I got into kind of shamanism. And shamanism was probably the closest where I really wanted, I really felt a part of, and not really a part of, but I wanted. And you got to understand that shamanism at this time, in the early 90s, mid 90s, was in Minnesota. At that, there was people paying, and I want to say that there were white people, white Americans, paying money, $2,500, about $2,500, $3,000, to Indians to teach them how to become a shaman. And that was kind of like the fad at the time. Not really a fad, but that was a movement at the time, was to become a shaman, to go into the underworld, to find your spirit animal, and to become, I guess, one with life in that aspect. Anyway, so they were paying money for it, and as I read and as I studied shamanism, I realized, you can't pay money for it. If you pay money for it, it's already corrupted. And remember, I was already corrupted so deeply that I didn't want anything false, and I knew, I had a sense inside of me of what was false, what was not real. And I knew that if I paid money to become a shaman, that was selfish, self-centered. Now, you remember in the other, video I had talked about that, Rick had taught me that the main thing in life that we got to battle, the big cause of everything, is self-centeredness, fear. Those three words: self-centeredness connected with a dash, and then there's fear. Self-centeredness, fear. And so I knew that was self-centered. If I was paying money to become a shaman, so I was paying money to have a religious experience, that's a fraud. And at the same time, I heard that, I learned that the Indians were using that to corrupt white Americans. And it was specifically against white Americans because, the history. And they were using it to not really corrupt, but to curse. Yes, to curse white Americans. And I learned a lot from that experience, you know. So anyway, um, so the when you go into the underworld and you did all this stuff, it was for selfish purposes. It was self-centered. And so I knew that, you know, I couldn't do that, but I still wanted shamanism still appealed to me. And so as I read and as I became more involved with it, you know, you're supposed to go into the underworld. When you go into the underworld, you know, they tell you that you meet the dragons, and the dragons will come to you and tell you that they rule the underworld, and so forth. And it says that they tell everybody that. And so, when you read Revelation and you read the Bible, you realize that, it talks a lot about the dragon. And yeah, the dragon he did rule this world, and he tells everybody that he does rule this world. But there's a secret that ruling, that authority was taken away from him. Anyway, not to get sidetracked, but you go into the underworld and you find your spirit animal, and you cling to him and so forth, and you hold on to him, and that becomes your spirit animal. And as you go into the underworld, you do these things, and so I was always a people person, and I always wanted to help people and be there for people. I mean, I could abuse myself to no end, and I did terribly. And so I didn't care for myself, but I cared for those around me. And so using shamanism, to me, shamanism, when you study shamanism is not about self. A lot of shamans would use it to control people, the fear aspect, the fear ratio, use it for superstition, to dominate people, and a lot of shamans did that, but a lot of shamans didn't. And so to me, to understand shamanism was that you become a part of the earth. You use the earth, you use the other spirits to help people, to be there for people. And so, but I could not go into the underworld because I knew I was so messed up in myself, that I had such a low view of myself, and like I said, I can condemn, I can judge, I could criticize, I could abuse myself. So, and I did, but I couldn't do that to others, and so I didn't like who I was, and so to go in the underworld in this state of mind, I knew would have been corrupted, wouldn't have been pure, and I was looking for a pure sense of life, a pure reason for life, and I knew it had to come from within. But there was nothing good in me, and that really that drove me in a lot of my decisions, and so I kind of just put it off, and it was just there in the back of my mind, and I remember I hated Christianity, and so experiences and things that happened in life. I met my biological father, and I was in Colorado with him, and we were driving to visit my grandparents, who I had just met, and I was building a relationship there, and it was wonderful, and very beautiful. And we were on our way to Loveland to visit Grandpa George, and we stopped at a truck stop because I had to use the bathroom. And I go in this truck stop bathroom, and inside the stall, there's a book, and the book is called The National Sunday Law. And I have it on my bookshelf here. Not the one I found, but the book. And it was a National Sunday Law. And again, I was very anti-Christian. To me, Christians were destroying the world. They were destroying everything, corrupting everything. And so I picked up that book, and I was like, oh, what are they doing? And during this time, I had heard about an organization, the Christian Coalition, and how they're trying to get power in the government to control people, and essentially what I had believed and thought. And so it's like, oh, what are they doing? What are they're going to destroy the world, and I want to know what they're doing, and I cursed Christianity, and I cursed religion, and so forth. And so I picked up the book, and I read it. I didn't read it that, we went on to my grandparents' house, and my biological father, flew to Salt Lake City, and during that weekend I read that book, and that book just completely threw a wrench in my life. Remember, before this, probably about a year about a year before this, 9 months, a year, I had gotten to the point where I said, okay, you know, what Jesus taught was good and it was nice, but since you don't see it, it doesn't exist. And it's not valid. I mean, when you look at the world around you and you look at the people who profess to be Christians, you don't see Jesus. And, you know, you realize that, you know, when Gandhi spoke and he said, he goes, I like your Jesus, and I love your Jesus, but I just can't stand you. You know, the Christians, the people who follow Jesus. And a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, had a bumper sticker on her car saying, saying, Jesus, protect me from your people. And so when you look at, Christianity and in this culture, in the Western, world, you don't see Jesus. You see greed. You still see self-seeking pleasure, self-centeredness. You still see the indulgence of sin. And so me being a sinner, I was the epitome of indulgence, of oblivion of all this stuff, and so for people to say that they're Christians and to see them still doing that, it gave me more. I mocked them, and I loved to mock them because they're of their hypocrisy. And so when I read this book pretty much showed me through history, going through history, the last 2,000 years, and even before then, that there's this great controversy. And the great controversy is between the devil and Jesus. And the devil is constantly trying to mar the image of Jesus, the life, the reality of Jesus. He's trying to alter it. So he gets us, he deceives us, and he gets us to believe certain things and certain lives that we can still do this and still be saved, still have Jesus. And it's like, no, when you're in Jesus, you are a new creature. You are a new person. You are created new. And there's life there. And but the devil, he's a master deceiver to mar the image, to change the image of Jesus. And this book showed it all through history, this great controversy, through prophecy, through what has happened back 2,500 years ago. And I loved history. And so as I read it, history opened up before me, proving to me what the Bible said was true. Because the Bible declared these things. The Bible said these things. And history proved it. And when I saw that connection, immediately in my mind, it was like, then I can be a new person. I can become a new creature. And there sparked within me a hope and a desire, because, remember, I hated who I was. I abused myself, and I knew it. There was nothing good about me that I could love. There's nothing good about me that I saw. And the only thing I saw of myself is as pagan as I could be. That was the only good that I could probably see. But yet I knew in my heart it wasn't pure. It wasn't true. Because I had to be something. I had to do something in order to have this peace. And peace is a big key. It's a very big key. And so at that moment I knew, it's like, wow, the history proves the Bible. The Bible proves history. So therefore, when Jesus says, I will make you a new creature, that I love you, come unto me, and I will give you rest. Oh, I wanted it. I wanted it so much. You don't see that in Christianity. You don't see that in religion. But the Bible is filled with it. And that's how I became a Christian, because I saw that he can make me a new person. I didn't see it. I believed it. Because history proved the Bible. And the Bible, it's an amazing book. It's an amazing book. I don't have time to go in on that. But all through the Bible, it's one big love letter. And it's a love letter to me. It's a love letter to you. And there's two verses I want to read to you. The first one is in Jeremiah chapter 33. In Jeremiah 33, verse 3, it says, "The Lord hath appeared of old unto me, saying, Yea, I have loved thee with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness I have drawn thee." With loving kindness I have drawn thee. The second verse I want to read is in Hosea. And in Hosea chapter 2, and there verse 14, it says that, "Therefore, behold, I will allure her, and bring her in the wilderness, and speak comfortably unto her." Now, he says that, "With everlasting love I have loved thee, and with loving kindness I have drawn thee." And so it's all about, when I see my life and experiences I had, I can really see that in loving kindness, he did draw me. And throughout all the isms and through all the things, I saw his hand guiding me and leading me to the point where I could really accept what he wanted to do and what he wants to do. Make me a new creature. Make me like Jesus. And so, and it says here that I will allure her. And God, in 1 John chapter 4, it says that God is love, and that is his essence. That is who he is, and that's who Jesus is. And so, not looking at Christianity, not looking at people who profess Christianity, who call upon his name, because remember, the devil's a deceiver, and there's many people in the world who deny the power of godliness, the power of Jesus Christ. And so, with loving kindness I have drawn thee, and he is love, and he loves me. And I don't have to be a Christian. I don't have to be good. I don't have to do good. I don't have to be a certain person. Now, the Bible is clear that he knew me before I came to be in the womb. That in the womb he created me. And so he took me and he formed me. He made me who I am. And my experiences corrupted that so much. But he said he wants to restore me. He wants to reclaim me, redeem me, make me new as he meant me to be. And so it's all about this work of love that he has for me. And so in him, in who I am, there is such extreme, wonderful value. Value that I am his son, that I am his child, and that he loves me, and there's nothing I can do to alter that, and there's nothing I can do to change that, and there's nothing that I can do to claim that, to prove his love. I mean, it's there. It's there. And from Genesis to Revelation, it's all about God searching for man. And that's a wonderful sentence. God searching for man. See, God was searching for me, and he found me. And I could say I found him, but I didn't find him because I didn't want anything to do with him. Remember, I was very anti-Christian. I was a pagan Christian. And God searched for me, and he found me. And so that's my testimony. That's how I became a Christian. That's how I came to love Jesus. And I have, that was 19 years, that was 20 years ago. And I've gone through a lot of experiences. I've gotten caught up in the outward form and so forth. But it's all about in the heart, and it's all about having him in the heart. He says he stands and he knocks. He knocks on our heart's door, and he wants to come in and sup with us and dwell with us and abode in us and make his home in us. And it's all about that heart relationship, that purified, that brings peace and joy and victory and hallelujah and glory, glory, glory. And so that's my experience. And so I hope and pray that you will be blessed by this, and that you are blessed by this. And may the Lord bless you, and may the Lord allure you and draw you with loving kindness. God bless you. I love you all very much.